You got that, right? And now, if you'd actually been listening carefully, that would sound very much as though it was actually a rather effective argument for my esteemed opponents. However, this essay, Alan Sokal's essay, Transgressing the Boundaries, has anyone heard of this? Anyone come across the essay? You know where I'm going, right? This essay was published in this journal, Social Text, by a physicist as a hoax. When this came out in Social Text, the editors thought, this is great, let's publish this. Look at this guy. He's basically deconstructing gravity and quantum physics. He's saying it's all a mess. The day this appeared in Social Text, Alan Sokal also published a letter in another journal, Lingua Franca, that said, this is a bunch of bullshit. And the folks who are buying into this crap, the humanists, published it. What a bunch of clowns. They don't know what reality is because they're a bunch of tools. Now I need to put that back in my filing cabinet. So we have a situation where scientists are able to come in and sort of pretend to be humanists. And I would challenge my opponent, or actually, here's an experiment. What I should do, and with your help, maybe we can pull this off after the debate to further demonstrate the larger validity of this argument, I would like to go pose as a physicist in this university. I will show up in a lab. You can go over to the bookstore. You can get the fancy white lab coats. I've got a thing for the goggles, actually. That's what I'm rather fond of. You never wore. You got. Okay. My instinct is that it would be very difficult for me to publish, much less actually stand about 10 minutes of inquiry from colleagues without going, hey, coffee or tea. So I will end there. I'm sorry, I was not aware that I was over the time. However, I would like to submit that there is an element here of humanist, everything's real, and that's a big problem, whereas scientists are allowed to engage in an element of empiricism and reductionism, which allows for a greater understanding of truth and validity. Thank you very much.
I didn't want to stop you because someone dropped into education.
What?
Go back to the leader of opposition on the opposition side.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'd like to present some refutations to what was said. I'd like to address what Dr. Egan said, but I couldn't hear him over his beard. So, unfortunately, I will only be able to talk about what Dr. Rodde said. Now,
It's on.
the first thing that should be said is that Dr. Rodde claims that they are both arts people, and they are. But Dr. Egan is a fraud. Dr. Egan did his thesis on a scientist. He published a book on a scientist. He is called by the chair of history a wannabe scientist. But, unfortunately, he cannot be one. And why is that? Because he has a grasp on reality. No matter what he does, he cannot become a scientist because he knows what's real, so he can study the scientists, he can dream about being them, but he can't be one. Because, my friends, it's true. Artists do try to escape reality far more than scientists. And why is that? Because we know how crummy it is. Reality is awful. Oh, God. If scientists knew anything about reality, they'd be just the same as artists. My goodness. Now, let's talk about a few different sciences. Physics, biology, chemistry, and let's put math in there. Math is the only one that's deductive. Everything else, that's based on, well, whatever they think. Experiments, they kind of throw it together. They don't know what's going on. They come up with these theories. They throw them down later. They don't know what's real. They're just guessing constantly. Now, math is deductive. I give it that. But it's based on things that don't exist. Imaginary numbers? Come on! Infinity? Nothing is infinite. That does not work. No. All sciences are based in craziness and nothing else. Now, back to artists having a firmer grip of reality than scientists. I want to talk to you guys about a little hunk of frozen something out there in space. Pluto. In reality, Pluto is not a planet. But in 1930, when it was discovered, scientists were so excited because they found another planet. You know who wasn't excited? Gustav Holst. In 1930, 4 years before his death, Pluto was discovered, and scientists were going crazy over it. Gustav, however, did not feel the need to add Pluto to his planetary suite. If you are familiar, there's a movement for each planet. Mars is perhaps one of the most famous ones. But he didn't feel the need to add one for Pluto. And why is that? Because he knew the whole time that it was not a planet. He knew the reality. The scientists, they were tricking themselves the whole time. That's how much time do I have? Do I want to talk more? Or? 3 minutes is pretty good.
Yep.
All right. I think this would be a good time to talk about a particularly crazy scientist. Someone who has no grip on reality. This is a bad picture. It's so colorblind and everything because it could not properly capture this man. This man is Nikola Tesla. He is undoubtedly one of the most brilliant scientists ever, which makes him pretty pathetic compared to most arts people, but we won't go there. Alternating current for years. But there was one pigeon, a beautiful bird, pure white with light gray tips on its wings. I loved that pigeon. Yes, I loved her as a man loves a woman. And she loved me. As I looked at her, I knew she wanted to tell me. She was dying. There came a light from her eyes, powerful beams of light, a blinding light more intense than I had ever produced in my laboratory. When that pigeon died, I knew my life's work was over. This man believed that flying rat was enough. Does this sound like someone who has a firm grip on reality to you? No, not at all. And he's one of the most brilliant scientists ever. So what does that say about them? On the other hand, I'd like to talk about Vincent van Gogh.
30 seconds.
Well, I'm going to take his time. You've got me going now. Vincent van Gogh is probably the craziest artist ever. He chopped off his own ear. What? You know, Vincent van Gogh. Craziest artist ever. Oh, you're making a joke.
I was trying.
It's not here. I can't concentrate. Anyway, he's probably the craziest artist ever, and yet he still had a firm grip on reality. All the paintings in his later life were very somber, yet optimistic, and artists or art theorists criticize it and say that they in fact were optimism of a return to sanity eventually, for he was falling deeper and deeper into mental illness, and he knew it, and he hated it. He likes reality. He's an artist. Of course, his sanity didn't return to him. So what did he do? Become a scientist? No. That would be a fate worse than death. So he killed himself. His grip on reality and his love for having a grip on reality was so strong that when faced with the option of not having reality in his grasp, he decided to kill himself instead. Craziest artist, still grips reality. Most brilliant scientist, probably one of them, loves pigeons. Yeah.